So I know you've worked closely with industry and have a research to practice philosophy. How can I, as a new faculty member, and others foster such collaborative work?
Research to practice is something that comes with the territory of research and what you choose to do research on. Research has been defined in many different ways: basic, pure, or fundamental research versus applied research, theoretical, or what they call as practical research. The essential difference between the two is that applied or practical research is primarily focused to address a specific problem, whereas pure, basic, or fundamental research is just research for itself to find some knowledge, and that knowledge may be applicable to all areas of science, engineering, or society. So in my view as a mining investigator, I have often chosen a problem that is a problem that affects mine safety, mine productivity, a mine environment, and I try to see what is the specific problem that which can be solved, that can lead to improvement of conditions in safety, in environment, or in productivity. This can be a new tool, can be a new technique, or even a new method. So what you find is, like, people look for a monitor, something that can give you a warning, or look for a new technique. Instead of doing this job this way, let's see if we can orient it differently and do it in a different way. Or finally, let's use these tools and techniques and develop a new method. For example, when they invented the longwall method of mining, they changed the machine a little bit, a different continuous miner. They changed the roof support a little bit, a different roof support. But the method was so dramatically different compared to what we were doing previously that it improved safety, productivity, and recovery very much. But the problem that they attacked was one of very specific problem. We wanted to improve mine productivity, mine safety, and all that. So the key thing is, if you want to take research to practice, keep in mind that people who are practicing should look at it favorably. If they don't look at it favorably, it will never become a practice again. If my son is not going to like the pudding I make, he's not going to eat it. From the beginning, I have to develop in my son an interest in my cooking, in my pudding, and in what I put in, how I make it. And in turn, he may like it, he may eat it, he may try it, he may modify it, but he will certainly know a lot of things goes in, it is good. Therefore, the first thing that one has to do in research to practice is keep the practice in mind and see what is going to help the practitioners. In fact, we call it a fancy word, shareholders. Get all the shareholders in the room and see what they want, what is their need, try to satisfy their need. It is difficult to expect that the research problem that you have defined is the problem that they are facing. And if it is not the problem they are facing, it is like helping the grandmother cross the street when the grandmother didn't want to cross the street in the first place. You might have done a good job as a Boy Scout, but you are going to get beaten for it. Okay, so that's number one. Over the years, I have used a number of approaches to ensure that the research to practice either directly or indirectly incorporate this step. That is, that what I do is really helpful to them, to the practitioners. Perhaps the most important aspect is the choice of the problem. There are problems and problems. And therefore, problems that will solve big issues, they are more important than problems that are going to solve small issues. Very often, small issues get solved along the way when one tackles a big problem. And when people tell me that big problems are too difficult to solve, too untractable, and therefore they are not the problems you want to attack, I keep telling this mentality may often lead to tackling small problems, which after solving you found you need not have solved in the first place. And therefore, choose a fairly large problem, but try at least 3 or 4 different approaches to tackle this problem. Small-scale lab experiments, full-scale lab experiments, math modeling and computer experiments. These are very important today. A lot of things that we used to do in the lab, we can simulate on the computer. But don't get fooled. Math modeling and computer modeling are very good, but they cannot point out to the practical difficulties of modeling. When you do a physical model, you will know the real practical problems of implementing a solution, because you have to do it. You are not doing it on computer. You are doing it in underground. You are doing it in the mind. Full-scale mind experiments. Very difficult, but you have to do it. Involve more people. The more people you involve, the more objections you will get to what you want to do. They will bring their own ideas, but be open-minded, because it's a research problem. Mm-hmm. There are many different ways to approach it. In tackling a research problem, one cannot be close-minded. I don't like, as I told you, as a mining engineer, to solve the dust problem, my choice is fit everybody with a mask. Because as a mining engineer, I feel breathing the dust causes all problems. So filter the dust out. How are we able to get astronauts to the moon and bring them back? All the time they are in some kind of a mask, controlled atmosphere. Anywhere you go to an extremely dangerous place, you are wearing mask. Well, it is said simpler than done. Miners may refuse to wear it. Miners may wear it when you are there. When you are not there, they may not wear it. Oftentimes, the mask may fail. It may obscure their vision, and they may get into other problems. There are a lot of practical problems involved. But my belief that masks will solve a lot of problems is very, very clear. On the other hand, there are people who believe they can reduce the toxicity of dust. While I agree to it, I still believe it's a later step. If you don't breathe, you don't have a problem. But I cannot be opposed to toxicity research. If I'm going to solve this problem, I have to incorporate that idea as well. One may be when the person breathes even less dust, let it be less toxic. Let's try to coat it. This is another important. If you want to make research to practice, the person working on toxicity should not be working in the lab. They should try to find ways and means by which the dust can be made non-toxic in the mine atmosphere. I, as a mining engineer working to control respirable dust being taken in, work with this toxicity person as to develop techniques by which this can be made less toxic in the mine atmosphere. So to bring myself around, if you want to research to practice, open mind, accept others. Finally, let me give you an example of the Penn State mine ventilation simulator. Remember the early 1970s? How many mine ventilation engineers knew, for one thing, computers and computer use? How many ventilation engineers knew ventilation simulation model? And how many ventilation engineers knew how to apply them? No, very few, precious little few. In 75, we completely revamped it, made it applicable to the 1970 69 Health and Safety Act, put out the model, put out 5 different volumes of publication. I decided the model will never be applied if I don't take an active interest. First thing I did was offer seminars and short courses. I called it as Computer Ventilation Simulation Model Application in Mines. Secondly, I decided to introduce it in undergraduate education. Third and most important, I decided to invite very, very senior ventilation engineers, told them I will help them set up their mines on the computer and help them apply it. As long as they will help my graduate students access to their minds and do some research. All the 3, within a span of about 6-7 years, became so popular that Penn State ventilation simulator was widely used in almost all the mines in Pennsylvania and eastern United States. This I consider as one of the key steps. So research to practice is not an afterthought. It should be a thought that should go along with the research proposal. You should incorporate your graduate students, some practitioners in the field, some ideas for in-mine testing, some ideas for seminars and short courses. It is like teaching. My philosophy in teaching is, if I assume that teaching is, I have done my lectures and it is done, I have not done my job. If you have not learnt what I have taught, I have not taught. So my goal in teaching is, you must learn. Similarly, a research, particularly for somebody like a mining engineer doing mining specific research, the practice end should always be a part of it. A certain portion of time has got to be devoted. If it is not applied, then it remains a report on the shelf. Now, all research may not be applied immediately, but eventually, if you have devoted a portion of your life to do research and you think it is worthwhile, you would like to see it used. Let's work towards that. That's what my idea is.
So, Dr. Ramani, you have many professional affiliations as well. For example, you served as the 1995 president of the Society for Mining, Metallurgy, and Exploration. You don't find yourself in that position without having served on many committees within the organization and in other roles. And I know these have included significant efforts on health and safety for the National Academy of Engineering as well as for the government. Can you tell me about that work?
Let me tell you that working on committees is a task that you must accept willingly. Very often, the rewards are the work itself. And at the end of the day, you see the committee has achieved its objective. You have only so many hours a waking day, and you have teaching, research, graduate students, administrative work in the department. Then you decide to work for, say, your professional society. Then you decide to work for your community. Then you decide to do other things. The important aspect of working on committees, as I told you, is I had some excellent role models. I never knew any one of the people that I had worked with, like Stefanko, Falkie, Manula, or Bob Frantz, turn down anybody who requested a service from them. And I had seen them. I saw Falkie and Frantz in 1973, I guess, when they started the Coal Division Scholarship Fund. I'm laughing because they thought they will be able to raise $500,000 in about 5 years. That was the goal. And as I told you, I was a young member of the Coal Division at the time, getting into the executive committee. Falkie was head of the Department of Mining at Penn State, and Bob Frantz was chairman of John T. Boyd. I thought these two guys should know how to raise funds. Of course, my prior experience was Bob Stefanko trying to raise money for Penn State Room in the new SME building in Littleton. And that was an experience in itself. Bob Frantz used to come down from Pittsburgh, and Tom and Bob used to prepare this big spreadsheet as to how to approach who to get this $500,000. And coal industry, was buzzing. They were just coming out from 550 million tons per year. The production was increasing about 50, 60 million tons per year each year. And the industry was doing very good, and the mining schools were increasing in enrollment. And we had 6 scholarships in the coal division, 1 for each. Their aim was to increase it to 18, and from something like $100 to $500 or something like that. This $500,000 goal was reached after 20 years. People like George Luxbacher was very critical in starting the coal division luncheon auction, which you continued for a number of years. The whole idea was, while money was coming, they were trickling in. But Bob, Frantz, and Falkie worked at it for about 4 or 5 years. Then the coal division leadership decided to take it over. And when I became coal division chair, I kept a close watch on it, then others kept a close watch. We said, while our goal might not be reached, the endowment will remain endowment. We will spend only the earnings. And today it is the largest endowment in a divisional scholarship fund. Those were the leaders that provided me the background. And I served in about 40 unit committees in SME. Some unit committees took a lot of my time. Some of these were program committees where it required a tremendous commitment of program for the annual meeting, fall meeting, annual meeting. I organized a symposium, short wall, long wall, state of the art in 1980. That required a tremendous amount of support from many different groups. These required committee work far beyond ordinary commitment. But let me tell you, as I told you, it's a labor of love. You should not assume committee work unless you have time to do it. It is not a line on your resume. Appointment to National Academy of Engineering committees, which is the question you asked, is very special because when National Academy invites you to be a member of a committee, they go through a tremendous selection process. From what I understand, they probably get about 10 or 12 nominations for every member they select for a committee. And they put together committees of very wide background. It may be a mining committee, but you may find a union member there. You will find a economist. You will find a mechanical engineer. You will find a medical doctor. You will find a sociologist, a psychologist, a couple of civil engineers, and maybe a mining engineer and a chair who is usually a member of the academy. When a National Academy report comes out, it's probably the Bible to what is going to happen in that area for the next 5, 6, 10 years. I have been on 8 National Academy committees. I was fortunate to be chair of 2 committees. Both committees I was asked to be chair. The study dealt with defining research for the next decade on mining topics. Then 1978, I was called by the National Academy to chair a committee on post-disaster survival and rescue. Ramani's knowledge on post-disaster survival and rescue at that time was some work on ventilation, diesel, sunshine mine fire, methane, and you had some knowledge of explosions in India. That was my first National Academy of Sciences committee. After about 2 years, we released a report that had looked at the Bureau's research for the last 10 years. And that 10 years of research was the research that was done after the 1968 Farmington coal mine disaster by Bureau of Mines. And therefore, they were looking at what they should do for the next 10 years. And it was very interesting work. Subsequently, I did work on technologies for mining industry. where we defined what are the needed technologies, say, post-2000 in the 21st century for mining, mineral processing, and mine exploration. Milt Ward, who was chairman of AMAX at the time, he was the chair of the committee. Tom Falkie and Ray Beebe were members of the committee. These were all members of National Academy of Engineering. And I was a member of the committee. And we defined solution mining as one of the future technologies of mining. That will be extremely useful. Remember that impoundment failure in Kentucky, that impoundment failed and sludge flew all the way through Illinois and eventually drained into Missouri-Mississippi River. This impoundment failure, they set up a committee on mine impoundments. I was a member of that committee. NIOSH, the entire NIOSH, in 2005, set up a committee with National Academy of Engineering for evaluating all the NIOSH programs. NIOSH had about 8 major programs. Some were industry programs, like construction industry, agricultural industry, and some were specific programs, like noise program. So they had these 8 programs, and they appointed a big committee to look at all the programs, and then individual committee to look at each program. I was a member of both committees in the sense that I was a member of the large committee and a member of the mining program committee. The last committee I served was a committee on respirable dust that George Luxbacher was talking about in 2018. To look at the standards sufficient, should they move ahead and do something else? I'll tell you one other committee I became a member, and a committee that was appointed to look at offshore safety platforms after the disaster in the Gulf of Mexico. This committee was appointed by the National Transportation as a part of National Academy of Sciences. This committee looked at offshore safety management. That disaster was so big that there was a congressional committee, there was a presidential committee, and then there was this National Academy of Sciences committee. And we were specifically looking at laws and regulations and Bureau of Land Management, what it did. And I brought in the idea of MSHA, Department of Labor. The interesting thing about my first exposure to the offshore drilling platform was I spent one night in a platform in the Gulf of Mexico. The previous evening, I was taken by helicopter and dropped off in this platform. I spent overnight in the platform. You know, it's like a hotel, a small town. The canteen was always open. You can go and eat anything, drink anything. And one part of the place was the drilling machine was drilling, and the oil was being pumped into a storage space. Next morning, of course, after finishing all my work at lunch hour, another helicopter picked me up and brought me back to New Orleans. But the point I want to make is safety on the platform is such immense magnitude. Serving on these committees calls for a lot of outside work. So when you ask me the question, that is why I said it's not a line on your resume that you should look at. It's a lot of commitment. And the society depends upon you. Look at the staff of the society. They are overworked with their own work. So they look upon a committee member as somebody they depend upon to do a good job. Let me tell you 2 other committees I served which are interesting. Again, One is the Beltier Advisory Committee of the Secretary of Labor. Another one is the Dust Advisory Committee of the Secretary of Labor. In these two cases, the Secretary of Labor wanted us to advise on pending legislation or proposed legislation. These committees are formed of 5 independent members, 2 management members, company representatives, and 2 union representatives. So the 9-member committee, the meetings are completely open. Serving in committees is very important, essential for a faculty member, essential for any member. And most important, it's a service. You should gladly accept it.
Absolutely. So, more specifically, though, can you discuss the work related to the follow-up on the Quecreek inundation and the recovery of the Quecreek 6? I understand you were appointed by the Pennsylvania governor one day after the rescue to report on ways to avoid similar situations. How was that experience?
Yeah, the Quecreek mine inundation, a lot of people call it as Quecreek mine disaster or call it as Quecreek accident and all that. Actually it is called a Quecreek non-fatal mine inundation because it is neither a disaster nor is it an accident. It's a non-fatal incident. And when Quecreek happened, I was actually not in Penn State. I was in Philadelphia, and I came back from an engagement in the evening, turned on the TV, and all of a sudden I see this accident in this mine, and everybody gathered there. And of course, for the next 48 to 72 hours was all crowded. And I was glued to it. I remember one call very distinctly, and this was a call from a reporter in Los Angeles Times, I guess. He asked me, question was whether the miners were alive or not. And I told them that the miners will not die due to inundation unless they have been washed away by the water, or they have been drowned by the water, or they are somewhere in the area of the mine where the atmosphere is very foul. Otherwise, I said, I'm not worried. They will be alive for a reasonable period of time. So he asked me, what is a reasonable period of time? Hours? I said, no, days. And he asked, there was some question on that. Why number of days? I said, generally, the atmosphere in the mine is pretty good. And people are not going to die due to hunger or due to water. People die in mines because the atmosphere is bad and they lack oxygen. So that's the reason why I said in mines in India, when they are flooded, we have recovered people after 10 days, 15 days. So I expect these people to be alive as long as they are in a safe place where the air is good. And there were a few other questions. Do you think the Pennsylvania authorities and federal authorities are doing the right thing? I said, they are doing the best they can. What else do you expect them to do, given that the limited knowledge they have? Anyway, the recovery went very well. I think it was Monday morning, I guess, or Monday morning when the miners came out, I guess, or late Sunday night. I had a call from governor's office on Monday morning that governor wants to appoint a commission to look into the causes of Quecreek and how to avoid that. I want you to chair it. I told him that I will call back within a short time, because I do want to call a couple of people and see what they think about it. Of course, I got some positive feedback, some negative feedback, but as you know, my commitment was, if not me, who? And can I be of service? Can I do something good? Is that something that I can do? I didn't know much about what the commission was, what the charge will be, but anyway, there is time to discuss these things. So I called back and then I was appointed. I was planning to go to India in about 8 weeks. And I thought the commission will be appointed. It will probably take about 2 months to appoint the commission, and I will have some luxury of time. When I went to Harrisburg and had a meeting with the secretary, I was told that they wanted the commission to be done in 6 weeks. And the terms of the commission he wanted was 3 public meetings. And we discussed the members of the commission, a communication expert, geophysical expert, a mining expert. I wanted a legal expert. So we had a committee of 7. Our objective was, why did this accident happen? Technical reason. How did we miss this danger, hazard, and how to avoid it in the future? The committee had 3 meetings. The governor's office was very helpful. They assigned 3 staff members. We had 3 meetings. We produced a report with 48 recommendations. The most satisfying part of that was the governor rejected one of our recommendations. Over the next 6 or 7 years, all the 47 were incorporated in the laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, either by passage of laws or by directives. The one that he rejected was important because as soon as the Quecreek accident happened, the governor said, Pennsylvania law says between mines, you should leave 150 feet of solid coal. That was the law. The governor increased that to 500 feet. And we suggested that 500 feet was not required. That if adequate drilling is done and proper drilling is done, 150 feet would have been adequate, because that would leave 300 feet of solid coal between mines. The governor did not agree. In any case, the Quecreek Commission was one of the most satisfying experience for me. I remember, to give you one example, a local representative from Pennsylvania, western part of Pennsylvania, called the president of the university and said that one of my constituents is complaining about longwall mining and drained off all his water and polluted his well. And he had gone to Penn State, and they had not done anything for him. Why should I recommend funding for Penn State or something like that? So the president immediately contacted the dean. The dean contacted the mining department. And Bob Frantz said, Raj, what should we do? Well, we can do a research project. Well, we undertook a research project basically for about $25,000 from the legislature of Pennsylvania to study subsidence. One of the conditions of the study was we had to give our results in a public forum in Western Pennsylvania. One of the guys from industry called us eggheads from the university. I told my colleague who was my water expert, he was very upset. You have to be prepared for criticism for doing a good job.
So as we wind down our interview, I wanted to touch on the many distinguished awards that you've received. National Academy of Engineering, AIME Honorary Member, Fulbright Nehru Chair, Howard Hartman Award, Howard Evanson, Percy Nichols, National Mining Hall of Fame, and this summer, the Penn State Distinguished Alumni Award. Can you tell us about these and, frankly, many other honors that you've received and your perspective on these, as I know you've also contributed greatly to nominating others for awards? I think that would be valuable advice for our audience.
Well, you don't work, do some work looking for an award. If an award comes along the way, it's good. Something that's very important for us to remember, and something that my religious as well as cultural background goes back to our Lord Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita says that for you, the responsibility is to do good work. Reward is not something that you should expect. Of all the recognitions that I get or I got, the things that I value most are recognitions that I get from people who are immediately around me. I always appreciated my colleagues when they told me that, Raj, that was good. That was the reward I expect. Awards from society, awards from professional organizations, awards from your education institutions. These are all peer recognitions which one should really appreciate, and I appreciate it. On the other hand, I know there are many, many more deserving candidates for these awards than I am, and that's how it goes. There are some who receive and many who don't. And therefore, think of all those who have not. There are many in this country who tell me, Raj, India must be missing you because you could have contributed so much to the mining industry. And I keep telling them, you don't know my classmates. There are so many of them who have achieved so much and who have contributed so much that you have not met them. And that's exactly the nature of an award. When you get an award, thank God somebody noticed you, somebody recommended you, and you got it. By the same token, it is your responsibility that if you see somebody who you think deserves an award, don't waste a moment nominate them. Nominate her or him for an award. It's only a right thing to do. I have enjoyed all my awards, particularly from my institutions, Indian School of Mines, Penn State. I enjoyed the awards that were given to me that were student nominated, like the Wilson Teaching Award at Penn State. Students thought that I deserved that award because they nominated me. Similarly, when I got an award for, say, a Best Paper Presentation Award, I feel that there were 7 or 8 papers or 10 papers in a session, and at least the people in judgment thought that that was a good presentation and deserved an award. So, where there are awards that I can associate with such nomination procedures, I very much appreciate it because I know what it takes. What I'm saying is, there is a personal component to these awards, and there is an impersonal component. You don't know who nominated you, who selected you. Many of these awards are in a large measure done in secret. You are not even supposed to know, and you are not supposed to tell the person to collect the person's data. On the other hand, let me say, I have also, again, go back to some of my mentors, and particularly Bob Frantz. It's from Bob I learned that you nominate people for awards. Bob was a great nominator. He will come around and say, Raj, I'm thinking of nominating this person. Would you support? And of course, I will support if I know the person and I know I can support. And I found this attitude of Bob very refreshing, very rewarding. And I look at the person who gets the award and how happy that person is. And knowing that the person deserves the award makes you feel very happy about it. And therefore, we should be very generous in nominating people for awards. So if you wonder why I nominate people for awards, because there are so many worthy people. I'm only sorry that there are not enough awards to go around. What brought happiness of awards to me much more clear than anything else was when my children were learning piano and violin lessons as very young kids. And they will perform and come back with a certificate. And they were so happy, so delighted. That encouraged them to learn more and perform even better. There is a growing aspect of the awards, a desire to do even better. We should never forget that. We want to encourage everybody to do even better than what we have done. Barbara, it has been a wonderful time with you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ramani. Really want to thank you for your words and your wisdom. I'm sure that our viewers will enjoy this interview, and I hope that our audience is as inspired by your experiences and contributions as I am. And thank you for speaking to us today.
Yeah. And let me say one thing about my association with SME and the AIME. I could not have belonged to much better organizations than these. They are great organizations to belong. They are very large, but they are very personal to you. Thank you.